to this week's episode of the Workers' World Labour Show. I'm your host, Helga Jansen-Daubia, coming to you from our virtual studio in Khayelitsha, Cape Town. The COVID-19 pandemic has severely affected the world and its people. Millions have been infected and more have died as a result of the virus. The pandemic has had a disruptive effect on people's lives, including their livelihood, their job security, and social lives. According to reports, the social disease of gender-based violence, with women being the victims of men, has increased under COVID-19 conditions. The scourge of GBV is not confined to homes and communities. It will also find its way into sectors of the economy like retail, domestic work and clothing, especially where there are high numbers of female workers. In today's show, we take a closer look of the impact of COVID-19 and GBV within the retail sector. We have a panel of guests from the trade union movement who have joined us to speak. But before we go there, let's take a look at an insert produced by the Workers' World Media Productions editorial team.
We live in South Africa. We know gender-based violence. You don't think it will happen to you, and it happened to me, and it wasn't by a stranger. I complained about aggression. Now this person is being friendly. Now I'm complaining again. What do I want? I knew my word was not taken seriously, and the conditions I was working under. I had no logical reason to think I would be believed. I would be respected. I would be taken seriously. I existed in a state of fight or flight. Every time I went to work, I complained incessantly until it got to a point where I absolutely gave up.
We've seen an influx of young female ladies coming into the workplace. We have been seeing a spike in sexual harassment complaints. But the problem that we have encountered is that some of these ladies don't want to go to the full extent of going through a disciplinary procedure with the perpetrator because they fear that they would not get better hours of work against the others that would get more hours. We all know that we are fending for more hours, and sometimes when these perpetrators, when you don't want to do what they want, they would really eat you with the hours.
I was busy working. There is this guy and the specific day I was making labels in the admin office, and when I came out, turned my back, and he came from behind and he touched me. I actually got upset. Very, very upset. Everybody in the shop knew about him.
Inzima kakhulu imeko yomama kwi-retail sector. Ubunzima bayo into yokubana bangabantu ababuthathaka kulaa ndawo bakuyo, ngoba kulula kubo babe ngamaxhoba ophatheka ogadalala kwisandla sabantu abangootata. I-nature le ye-sector yinto yokubana phaa kwi-sector ungafumana oomama bangabona abantu babhatalwa imali encinci kakhulu. Nendlela yabo yokusebenza nokuphelelwa ngumsebenzi indlela elula. Umzekelo, xa umntu oyindoda efuna ukwenzelwa le nto zi-sexual favors umntu ongumama kule nto uba mhlawumbe i-supervisor esebenza ezo shift azisebenzayo, uyakwazi ukucuthelwa neentsuku xa ingavumelani nalo, ne-hour xa ingavumelani nalo, athi kuba naye ebethwa liphango ngelinye ixesha azamkele iimeko ezinzima ezinjalo.
To me, it seems it's a norm for him to do it. I don't know what made him do that to me that day. And I didn't see him. He just came from behind, and I never liked what he did. So I approached him, and he still took it for a joke.
Now, in the retail industry, the sexual harassment, a lack of transformation, is on the rise. And unfortunately, there seems to be a lack of enthusiasm in the private sector, in the retail sector, to, in fact, act with speed to resolve lots of sexual harassment cases or ill treatment of women in particular in these spaces. There are instances where there's little reporting because of fear of victimization, because of fear of retaliation.
The majority of cases about maybe a manager making a sexual comment, maybe inappropriate touching, and when you take the matter up, it normally just get to the first stage. Then the victim would back down and say, no, 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 don't worry, I don't want to continue anymore. Despite you trying to convince the person, listen here, this is wrong, let us take it to the full cause. It's very seldom that it actually goes to the full cause.
When I took this to management, it was only for that time, and, say maybe for a month, and it just went quiet, and like there was a lot of people on the side, and there was a lot of things said about me, even by management team. It was almost like they blamed me. It's almost like I asked for it.
The support is very, very minimal, if there is any, because it is always women who are made to feel that it is them who are problematic. The survivor or the victim, she's made to blame herself that you called for it.
I think the union must find a strategic way of maybe having sessions where we can show these workers that, there's nothing wrong for you to go the full extent for your complaint, and get the desired result that you want, because it's about stopping these perpetrators in their tracks.
But I can also mention two things. One of them is the pay inequalities. I mean, the pay gaps between men and women, between management, it's huge. And also you have issues of safety. I mean, where women go from work, they go to their places of abode at very ungodly hours. Their safety is always compromised. They are at risk. Some are being raped whilst en route to their place of abode, to their homes.
We have seen there's quite a few employers that stick to the bare minimum of what legislation tells them to do. For instance, legislation would say they must provide reliable transport, but that is where it ends. You see, there's some employers that does much better than others. And others, there's some that is simply not interested. As long as you can provide a service for them, they're not interested. You need to render your service to them, and they are all about making money. They're not interested in how you get to work, how you go from work to get to your homes. They don't care if there's gang violence. All that they care about is their profits.
We know that the majority of workers in this country are women, but we also know that it is women who carry the disproportionate burden of care work, both at home and in the workplace. Now, most of them would not risk losing their incomes, would not lose that which sustains their families, because statistics tell us that men are not in the lives of their children. Statistics also confirm that it is women who are at the coalface of inequalities in our country, who are at the coalface of sexual harassment, at the coalface of violence, of all sorts of inequalities. It is women who every day are at the receiving end of one would call a toxicity of masculinity in our country, which is prevalent in the workplace.
Welcome back. In today's show, we talk about GBV, and this is an extension of a show that we may have done a few weeks ago. We're looking at GBV specifically in the retail sector, and we're joined by trade unionists from Sakawu and New Law and a commissioner from the Commission for Gender Equality. I want to start with Karen Manuel. Welcome, Karen, branch organizer for Cape Town New Law. Nice to see you again, and certainly no stranger to Workers' World.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, at the end of the day, we all would want everybody to be protected. So I'm happy that we are able to be given this platform. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. We're also joined by Angie Peshle, First Deputy President for Sakawu, so the South African Canning Commercial Workers Union. Welcome, Comrade Angie.
Thank you very much, Sharon, and I'm pleased for you to have me.
All the way from Gauteng.
Yes.
We're also joined by Mbusele Botha, a commissioner for the Commission for Gender Equality. Thank you very much for joining us, and definitely the voice of the Commission needs to be in this conversation. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I think it's also important that we are part of this groundbreaking analysis of where the country is vis-a-vis GBV femicide in the workplace.
Commissioner, let's start with you. I introduced us by saying we'd had this program previously. GBV in our nation, has there been progress as a departure from lockdown in addressing GBV, specifically within the economy?
Well, I thank you for the question. I think one has got to start by saying that we, as we speak now, we are led by President Ramaphosa, who we think, in our view, is leading from the front in so much that he has centered GBV as one of the pillars of his presidency. So I want to submit and argue this afternoon that we as a country, we're doing enough, but it will never be enough. We as a country, we are, that culture of silence has actually been broken. And we as a commission are of the view that there's still much to be done, but we can only succeed if we bring on board the perpetrators who are males in this country. We can only succeed again if we deal decisively with patriarchy and its ugly attendant consequences. So in short, all I'm saying is that as a Chapter 9 institution, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's not yet uhuru. Because every day women are killed. Every day women in precarious jobs are in fact sexually violated, are demeaned, disrespected. So we are of the view that violence against women, femicide in our country, we still have a lot to do. But suffice to say that we are in a country that the president has or is leading from the front, and we think that it's important, especially him as males, because the elephant in the room, as we speak in these deliberations, are main. It is patriarchy, it is male privilege, it is in fact male dominance in our society. So until and unless we deal decisively with patriarchy, we will not be able to deal with violence. And by that we mean that all forms of violence and sexual harassment, GBV, femicide are in fact part and parcel of the huge problem that we have in this country.
Okay, so let me thank you for that, Commissioner. Karen Newlaw, one of the really established retail trade unions in the sector, give us a sense of the extent of violence against South African women or women workers in the retail sector currently.
Yes, firstly, thank you very much for, the fact that you said that we are established. We are one of the oldest trade unions in South Africa. So, given the years that we have been dealing with workers' issues, from a gender-based violence perspective, we obviously have been exposed to various types of violence that have been perpetrated, especially against women. And I also want to applaud the Commissioner because, in my opinion, the Commissioner is spot on in terms of, who is, or which I would like to unpack and contribute in terms of why is men, instituting or committing these different types of violence against women. So yes, we've dealt with women who have been physically abused, mentally abused, psychological, and the psychological impact you know, that gender-based violence has on women, which in our experiences dealing with these women have been so underrated, because in many instances there isn't enough support.
Karen, allow me to bring Angie into this part of the conversation. Sakawu has, of course, also, like New Law, contributed to the national conversation, shedding light on the problem of GBV, particularly for vulnerable women workers in the retail sector. Angie, give us a sense of the circumstances. Give us an example of the circumstances under which women work in retail. And when we say retail, we mean the big supermarkets, the malls, etc. What they experience. Give us an example of a case.
Thank you, Sharon, once more again. SACAO is one of the oldest union that is formed during 1975. And we were amongst the first labor movement or trade union that established the gender structure, having observed that most women within retail are observing the sexual harassment challenges. It doesn't start now, it comes from very far. Hence, we're able to ensure that we are having a gender structure that is also constitutionalized. And in ensuring that we reduce or we curb that disease, we are having collective agreements with employers where we are organized, where we are able to make sure that our members can and ensure that they report sexual harassment offenses within the internal establishments where grievances are able to be handled within that cap of collective bargaining that goes in line with the parental rights.
Thank you for that, Comrade Angie. It seems that we know about the work of COSATU and New Law in establishing a lot of the shop floor rights to protect workers. But Commissioner, as Comrade Angie says, they were established in 1975. New Law has been around for a very long time as well. But the contributing factors that still make women vulnerable to sexual abuse and abuse in the retail sector, what are those contributing factors? And how do we still have this after more than 3 decades?
Well, it's about entitlement. It's about privilege. It's about power. It's about a sense of invisibility. But also it's about how we as men have been raised to believe that women's bodies belong to us. Women's bodies are...
I'm going to ask you to take a break there. We're going to have to go to a break. To you at home, don't go away. The Commissioner will continue after these messages. Welcome back. Commissioner, before the break, you started giving us a sense of what the contributing factors are to women being continually abused in the retail sector, sexually in terms of GBV. Over to you, Commissioner.
Well, like I said earlier, it's about entitlement, it's about privilege, it's about a sense of invisibility. But at the core of it, it's about how we as men have been raised throughout the world, have been raised to believe that women's bodies belong to us. And these, in fact, are promoted or supported by institutions such as cultural institutions, the corporate world, but also the religious world. All of them, they contribute to the ongoing belief that women's bodies belong to us. There's also a sense that women, in fact, are minors. So domestic workers, retail workers, at the core of it, it's about exploitation. At the core of it, it's about, and this is important for us as a commission, it's about entitlement. It's about a sense that there is a level of a heightened impunity that I, as a boss, as a shop steward, I, as a supervisor, nothing will happen to me because, in fact, what would be the problem? Because women's bodies belong to us. We've been raised from time immemorial. So the last part of your question is, what do we do? Unless we engage in a more intentional, deliberate manner, unless we engage men, unless we engage boys, because women don't abuse themselves, women don't sexually violate themselves. But more importantly, we are talking today, the South African government has not signed the C-190. I mean, this is a very important tool that would make sure that GBV, femicide in the workplace, sexual harassment is done away with. So we think
Commissioner, thank you. Let me bring Karen in there to extend the point that you make about a particular United Nations, it's the International Labour Organization clause, which requires that governments sign on. Tell us more about this clause, Karen, as a global tool to protect workers in the sector.
Yes, look, Convention 119, there's various articles within Convention 119, which obviously instructs or spells out, which countries should comply with in order to safeguard women, and also the fact that, women, it's like, what the Commissioner is saying, we're vulnerable. Women, females have become so vulnerable just because of the fact that they are females. And also, if you look at our country per se, when a woman reports that she has been psychologically abused, physically abused, fine, yes, there is help out there, but I just want to make a reference to the fact of when a woman gets put into a shelter. Yes, she gets put into a shelter with her children for the reasons of being removed from the perpetrator. But why must the woman be removed out of the safety of her environment? The children get uprooted. They have to move away from the schooling, etc., move away from their friends. The perpetrator, which like we have agreed upon, is mainly the men within our country. They then have the freedom of the home. They actually then have the freedom to, to do what they want to. In various.
Let me bring Angie into this, because we're talking about, and you have also sketched this about all the contributing factors that makes the abuse even worse. Angie, come in here and tell us, within the retail sector, there are issues where people will keep quiet if it happens on the shop floor. Will people keep quiet because they are so fearful of losing their jobs? Give us an example, if you have, in your experience, where this has actually happened.
Thank you very much once more again, Sharon. The experience is that the young women who are freshly employed, who does not understand the environment of the workplace at all, and with the legislation that is giving them the space of part-time work, precarious work, if you work for 27 hours, your needs are more than what you are going to earn within the 27 hours. Then the male counterpart, who's your supervisor, who's your manager, will take advantage of that to say, if you want me to schedule more than 27 hours, if you want me to schedule to convert you to a permanent from a casual hour, then ensure that you becomes my partner in crime by exchanging sexual harassments. That's where we find more women are coming across in there. And they don't share that because they are advised not to tell the other. The reason being that if I tell the next one, myself as a supervisor, male supervisor, I won't be able to jump into the next one, because their thinking is that from time to time, if he employed 6 or 7 young workers who are female, at the end of the day, they must be sexually harassed by that person in leadership who is scheduling their hours at the workplace. Even if they can recognize that, they are unable to question that, but there are those who become more brave and speak up with the campaign that as Sakau we have launched that says Bua Masadi Bua. In English it says speak woman speak.
Commissioner, I want to bring you into this part of the conversation because both Karen and Angie have sketched us the lived experience of women on the shop floor. Has the Commission been active, particularly in the retail sector? Have companies, have cases come before the Commission that you can maybe give us some more information about? Because it would seem that there is a greater opportunity for transactional relationships to evolve that support GBV on the shop floor, in the store, in the retail sector.
Yes, indeed. What the Commission does almost every year without fail is revise both private and public. But because we're talking about the retail, we conduct what we call investigative hearings, where we call in your top brass in the industry for them to account about their organogram, about facilities of women, about GBV, about sexual harassment, femicide. And I must hasten to add that I speak with you since 2014, being the commissioner here, is that the picture is bleak out there because the numbers may not reflect what is happening on the shop floor, mainly because, and this is what the commission believes, of the consequences, that they are reprisals, that women will not come to the fore because there are these dire adverse consequences. So to answer your question, we do indeed call them to account retail, and I must emphasize for record's sake is that the picture out there in the retail world has got nothing to write about. It is in fact bleak. That is why it's important that the convention I spoke about and the trade union movement, it's important for them to put pressure to bear, or to bring pressure to bear on the powers that be, so that as a commission our work is made easier in holding them accountable.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that. Karen, I want to bring you in here. Before we go to a break. Karen, before the break, we were talking about the conditions and what trade unions need to do. The commissioner was talking about that the commission has an annual road show. I know that New Law and Sakau have a lot of education, but we're still sitting with a problem. What, in your view, is the block?
Yes, look, obviously as a trade union, we also do have, our policies and procedures in terms of, combating gender-based violence. However, bringing it to the workplace, my opinion would be, and yeah, I want to touch again on Convention 119. I think it's Article 9 of Convention 119, where it says that there's obviously certain provisions that employers need to take responsibility for in order for, a gender-based violence not to be perpetrated against women, and that it needs to be vigorously implemented as well as monitored to ensure that it doesn't happen. And then it even goes further to say in the implementation part thereof, where if these type of measures is not complied with, that even sanctions can be brought against particular countries, that doesn't comply or observe Convention 119. But is this happening? So even as a trade union, we can have the best type of policies, but if we don't have the necessary measures in place from a macro perspective, we've been driven by our government, then, what is the likelihood of gender-based violence, ever being eliminated or eradicated? And yes, I want to go back to the point of how do you actually deal with it from a root perspective, because at the end, of the day, the psychological impact, that it has on women, and with that comes the frustration, which then also impacts, the ability to perform efficiently within the workplace, which then ultimately leads to absenteeism, poor work performance, dismissals, which then ultimately comes back and lays at government's feet, because once a worker, in this particular case, females, withdraw their pension funds or their provident funds, I mean, we all know, it doesn't last long. This is also women's retirement money, and ultimately, the focus gets shifted back to government, because they then ultimately have to look after, these women who have been abused by men. So,
Karen, let's bring Angie into this part of the conversation now. Thank you for that, Karen. Karen is sketching the long term and the systemic effects if the state does not hold the private sector, the retail sector, to account, and to perhaps do more. And clearly the convention in the IOL tool does give that to governments. But Angie, tell us about what happens to, for example, a company. If there is, all the time sexual harassment cases come to the CCMA, all the time there are disciplinary cases against senior managers or male workers for doing this, what does the company actually do? We know what the law says, but give us a sense of what happens in reality if there is all these power relations going on. Sharon, I think Angie's got an audio problem.
Sharon, she's muted.
Okay, I'm muted now.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Apologies about that. The experience and the observations that SACAO, with the collective bargaining agreements that we have put in place, they are tightened in by the conventions that have been there. You'll take you from this harassment does not start now towards women. It started during the implementation, where employers had some clauses: when you become pregnant, automatically you must leave your work without any pay, and your job is not guaranteed when you come back from maternity as to whether you'll still be reinstated or you'll be re-employed newly. So now SACAO had put in place collective agreements that are driven for by the basic conditions of employment, as well in assisting that in that regard, that there should be maternity leave. As in, when a woman goes for maternity leave, your job is guaranteed after a particular stipulated time. When you're back, you still get your job safe. Now, coming back from what the commissioner has raised in relation to Convention 190, SACAO is amongst the union who have been spearheading the sexual harassment to be made as an obligation towards all employers, not only within the retail sectors, because it does happen even in the public employment. However, representing the retail perspective, Convention 190, we are still advocating for it, that government, with the leadership of the President Cyril Ramaphosa, which we have seen him leading in this regard since 2019 from the summit, that there should be a GBV, a legislation change, which indeed is advocated for now. There's a national strategic plan that is still in place, which we are still also advocating for it, that it should push that prior its conclusion of the 100 days, Convention 190 should be part and parcel of that, towards ensuring that it's ratified before we conclude the summit NSP. That's one aspect.
I want to bring the, can I bring the, Angie, allow me to bring the commissioner back in here. It would seem that there's a lot of expectation, Commissioner, for the state to take the lead in this. But the state is not the retail sector. They're not the ones who own the big stores, and yes, I get that they may have some. The unions do organize some of the public sector workers, but in a large part, this is the private sector. Aren't we having too much of an expectation from the state? Should this not be at the doorstep of the private sector?
Well, I think your point is valid. It has to be all of us involved. But I mean, the people who are at the coalface, who are women, have got to put pressure to bear. I mean, the trade union movement must, should, and can play a critical role. So, and then what government can do is to create an enabling, conducive environment with laws, so that there are consequences.
Commissioner, allow me to interrupt. When you say an enabling environment, the state must give us some practical examples of what the Commission would recommend to the state to bring the private sector to respect the convention of the ILO, for example.
Well, we can't even talk about because government itself must rectify the convention. So let's start there. I mean, you can't expect private sector to do its part when government has not itself saw the need to, in fact, ratify the Convention 190. So it's important that we start at the beginning. The point I'm making is that whilst we talk about laws, I mean, the labor relations, all of those, but what is critical is the South African government must make sure that it does ratify, and so that it then domesticate these laws in our country. And in trade union movement, the country, COSATU, in point, is in alliance with the African National Congress, and the African National Congress has its own deployees in Parliament.
Commissioner, I have to ask you to press pause there. We're going to come back to this point. To you at home, don't go away. We'll be back after these messages. Welcome back. We're talking in our final segment, GBV within the retail sector. The point that we made just before and during the break even was that we seem to put a lot of pressure, and this is for Karen, we seem to put a lot of pressure on the state. The Commissioner was talking about indigenizing, if we can put it that way, Commissioner, these ILO conventions. And yes, the state must make the environment like that, but private sector also needs to come to the party. Can you tell us, Karen, more about the SPAR supermarket chain initiative? What is being done by the retail industry to support female workers and eradicate the problem? What is SPAR doing?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay. The question is, we're talking about that, we're putting a lot of emphasis on how the government needs to create this enabling environment, as the Commissioner says. But, I'm once again putting the challenge out there to the retail sector, the people who own the retail sector. Tell us about what the SPAR supermarket chain initiative is all about.
Look, I'm going to be upfront. The issues that we are aware of within the retail sector, for argument's sake, is the fact of the working hours, that women are exposed to. And also, you know, the transport that they do take home, right? And how they are exposed to the different types of violence, as well as, you know, the taxi drivers, some of them are left alone. That is also another form of exposure. You know, when it comes to them having to leave their workplace, and yet, you know, many of the employers are not taking the responsibility, you know, when it comes to issues of such a nature. But yes, I mean, I want to go back to the point of trade unions, you know, as can have whatever types of policies in place, but if it isn't driven from the, you know, via our government, yeah, then you know, it really makes things very difficult for us, and also it continues, you know, the cycle of gender-based violence against women.
Angie, would you like to weigh in here on the challenge that supermarket chains, the retail sector themselves, must be as accountable for making sure that the laws that the Ramaphosa government and that our constitution enshrines, that they are at the forefront, because these are workers who are making money for them? Sis Angie?
I'm not too sure if I got your question, because you keep on cutting. If you may repeat it.
My question is, I'd like for you to also comment on the responsibility which the private sector has, and maybe you can give us some more insight on what the SPA initiative is all about.
Thank you, Sharon. The responsibilities that the private sector as employers have towards its employees is that, one, they should ensure that they are having a safety public transport to and from workplaces, particularly those who are working early shifts and late shifts daily. That's the first responsibility that they have. The second responsibility is that they need to respect the legislation from the Occupational Health and Safety Act. That, of course, brings in the sexual element in. Harassment is another safety that employees and employer, it's something that should work and ensure that employees are safe at all places. The third element is that private sector should not shy away from attending the network discussions in shaping the legislation within this country. Like earlier on, you raised that, and together with the commissioner, that it's not only government's responsibilities, but it's everybody who's in around the country, employers, government, labor, through its federations, civil societies, that we all join hands and ensure that everybody is safe, especially around the gender-based violence femicide, so that we ensure that we eradicate this element of disease. It should not occur continuously. Somewhere along the line, we need to stop it, because safety is always there. And in ensuring that from the civil society in particular, we start to educate our boy children that they are human, same as women are human like them. We are equally so. There's no boy, there's no girl, but we are all human beings. We need to live without fear, without favors, but working together as human beings.
I want to ask each of you, and maybe we start with the commission. Gender-based violence, as Sis Angie has indicated, is a societal, you call it a disease, Sis Angie. I'd like to know what the commission is going to be doing as we enter a new cycle of activism, which usually ends the year with 16 days and starts the year with 16 days. What is the commission, what is your program, particularly for women within the economy, to protect them against GBV?
Well, thank you for the question. What we continue to do is to do the investigative work I spoke to you about, but also together with COSATU. I had mentioned to you that the Convention 190, we are ongoing in terms of educating in the shop floor, but also working with different COSATU affiliates in ensuring that we will mobilize, galvanize different retail industry, both trade union and workers. But again, let me emphasize, it's important, Helga, that the Convention 190, it is signed as a matter of urgency. We cannot, the luxury is expensive. The luxury, in fact, continues to define what women's struggle is all about. 26 years into our democracy, this can't be allowed.
Exactly. Karen, the commission commissioner is very much about that the convention must be signed. What is new law going to do to make sure that this becomes a big campaign? How are you going to publicize this amongst workers and in your federation as a whole?
Yes, naturally as affiliates, we obviously need to put pressure on our federation or instruct our federation to obviously endorse this and put pressure on our government in order to sign the convention. And then also to, via our federations to attack the scourge aggressively by getting involved from a grassroots level within our communities, and also to especially educate our women who has been abused via, gender-based violence, because ultimately they also become, they take on the behavior of being abused, whereby the cycle continues because they then transfer that type of behavior via the aggression, to the boys, to the male children, which then affects a next generation. So yes, this scourge, this evil needs to be aggressively attacked, and yes, as trade unions, I believe we are the employers' conscience. We keep them on their toes. We remind them of certain things, when it comes to how to treat their workers, which is human beings. And yeah, so if the scourge isn't attacked aggressively from grassroots level, then it will never be eradicated.
How is Sakawu going into this next phase as we go towards 16 days and we also kick off another year of activism?
Thank you very much for that question. As Sakau, we're not only even talking on 60 days. To us, GBVF, it's a campaign that should go along with the 365 days, because every day we experience a number of gender-based violence that is occurring within the employment itself. And again, on behalf of COSATU as well, we have established, as COSATU is having a policy, sexual harassment policy, that is the leading federation in ensuring that all affiliates should also have that kind of a policy that will encourage the private sector, that we're not only saying it should be them. Hence, earlier on, I said it should even go further into government or public employment, where would also urge the Commission for Gender Equality should cut across, should not only go to employers, should penetrate across the employers in ensuring that they're checking around the gender policies as to whether they are in place. We cannot emphasize more on the question of Convention 190.
Yeah. I want to say thank you to all our guests, Mbasilo Bota, Karen Manuel, Angeli Peshla. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that particularly for the Commission, certainly in the future, we will get you back to discuss more issues around gender. Thank you to all of you, and to you at home. Apologies for the gremlins in our system this week. We're working eagerly to get back to the studio setting, but as you know, we need to ensure that all our crew is safe. We hope to see you next time on the Workers' World Labour Show. From me, Helga, and the crew, till next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.